Plotaholics Podcast is not meant to make light of those with an actual serious addiction. If you have an actual serious addiction, the Plotaholics Podcast should not be used as a replacement for treatment. If you are not in a treatment program for substance abuse, and you are somehow still offended, then fuck you too. Sincerely, your hosts.
Take a trip with us to Newbog. Just promise not to drink the goo.
Oh my God!
If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right, welcome to a very special episode of the Plotaholics. I am here, Brian is here, and once again we're joined by the great Joe Compton.
All right, so now that we've got through the intro, I feel comfortable sharing with our audience that Joe threatened to mute our conversation that we were having because I saw the movie first. And then Shane saw it next. So Joe was the last one of us to see it. And Joe was I could see the anger in his text. He's like, if you don't stop, I am muting this conversation. I am blocking you until I see it.
Well,
Joe was ready to throw haymakers.
We were pretty vague at first, I think.
We were very vague.
You were.
But I definitely understand why you would be getting nervous.
Yeah, because as you start talking...
Yeah, I mean, but
it just goes.
Well, the moment that I saw it, right, we all got together and we've been chatting ever since. I mean, we have what, probably 3 open streams right now on Facebook talking about this movie, and
it's like
just
the
been
three
like
of us
nonstop.
Yeah, it's the 3 of us in our own, and then Joe and I are in one with Joshua Robertson of A Writer Imperfect, and then Katie Salidas, aka Madam Saladas herself, of Spilling Ink. And we're just going back and forth and back and forth.
So I want to turn things on its head this week with our show order, and I'll actually start with our 0 to 5 shot rating. This is the Plotaholics rating system that we use here to decide how good or bad a movie is. And I will play the rating system bumper for you guys right now in case this is your first time.
The Plotaholics rating system for the movies is a pretty simple system. Basically, they rate movies based on how many shots it takes to get through them. So if you got a good movie and you get through it all the way sober, then it takes 0 shots to get through the movie. And then if you got a really bad movie, then it could take up to 5 shots to get through the whole thing. I think you can try to figure out the middle part yourself. So what can I get you?
All right, so I want to start with our guest, Joe Compton. Joe, I guess, just talk to us a little bit about, tell us first what your rating is, and then walk us through just your general impressions of this movie. And we'll try to save too many of the specifics for a little bit later, but just, walk us through your first initial impressions. Or something like that.
I'd probably go 2 shots on this because there are some moments that are bumpy, but I think that overall, it'd be like 2 shots in the middle of the movie, and then the beginning and the end. You need no shots at the end. If you need shots for the 3rd act, you're not watching the movie I watched. But for the first 2 acts, I think 1 shot for the 1st act and maybe 2 shots for the 2nd act, and then yeah, you're drunk enough to get through the 3rd act.
Yeah, right.
Wow. So you're giving a 3-shot rating.
Or 1. I'd go like 2.25, maybe.
He's going 2.25.
That's a
real, that's a solidly strong mixed drink.
Yeah.
Okay.
That you're
Joe's drinking a mimosa.
Yeah, and that's honestly a pretty good way to go, you know?
Oh yeah, okay.
So all right, so with that in mind, Joe, you were talking about like sort of your Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 experience there. Again, just sort of generally walk us through that. Like, so what did this movie mean to you in general, and do you think that it sort of capitalized and delivered on everything that you had hoped it would?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I had a lot of questions going into this as we talked in the last podcast, and a lot of, been telling a lot of people there's certain things I wanted to have happen, and all the expectations were met. So I think every question that I had was answered. And for that, I think the movie hit on all cylinders. I do think there's some things that are confusing that will take a couple turns to go and see it again and again to get down solidly. There's a lot of things that I feel like I missed because I was so emotionally brought into this film that I want to catch back on that. And I'm sure once I see it a second, third time, I'll have so much more analytical ideas about it. But it's this kind of movie that is so layered and it has so much. It really hits you in every aspect of every sense. You know, the emotional sense, the thinking sense, the analytical sense, the whole gamut, and I think it's worth seeing it just for that and experiencing that alone.
Awesome. Brian, your thoughts, rating and general impressions.
All right, I'm gonna have to give this some serious thought, because the one thing that I don't want to do here on the Plotaholics is I don't want to give a whole bunch of 0 shots. 0 shot ratings are for films like, in my opinion, like The Godfather, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or The Departed, in that regard. But for
movies that feel like you need to be completely sober for just to appreciate it, right? Like just to
exactly,
to get...
or even Gangs of New York would be a 0 shot film. However, for Endgame, I am actually gonna go. I'm gonna go for 2 shots. It's a 2 shot film for me. So that's gonna be a screwdriver for Brian. And the reason why, and I'll go with Joe on that as well. The first act is wow. The second act is, there's a lot to tread through, and any time travel is involved, it's gonna be different. And it's not just Marvel that had issues with time travel. I mean, any movie that has time travel in it, you run into that same problem. But I can understand what Joe and some other people that I've seen have had to say about that aspect of the film. And I'll also echo Joe that this movie is so emotional that it's really wrap your head around it, because you're too busy with your emotion to really, shall I say, to really be able to grasp it. At the end of this movie, I was a 13-year-old kid again. I had so many emotions running through me. I was exhausted. Sharon and I went to go eat afterwards, and I could barely eat because I was just tired. I was drained, and I did not have to get up at all. I did not have to get up. I sat the entire 3 hours and nothing. I did not have to go. So just so you know. And then that third act is, oh my God. That third act is just... It's some of the best storytelling that I've seen in a comic book movie. And I don't even, and we talked about this earlier. I don't even want to just call these comic book movies anymore, because that's, to me, that sort of minimalizes them, and they don't deserve that. This film, Endgame, if Iron Man laid the foundation, Winter Soldier helped it get the sustenance. This is the icing on the cake right here, where it's like, you know what? You can't just dismiss films as comic book films anymore. And almost $2 billion in less than 7 days, that tells the tale right there.
Yeah.
But the time travel aspect, the second act, made it a little bit so I would need the 2 shots to sort of help relax my brain from all the emotion to wrap my mind around it.
Yeah, and I'll echo similar sentiments all around. When I walked out of this movie, man, I was ready to say 0 shots,
I wanted to.
Yeah, I was ready to. But then the longer I sit with the movie, the more that the seams start to show, And so, for all practicality's sake, you probably
You're
don't.
kind of paralyzed because it's so emotional. You take on such a roller coaster. It's kind of like when you get off of a roller coaster, you're kind of like you have to take that breath and almost step back, and you're so like you're almost paralyzed by it. And like Brian said,
Absolutely.
I was I had a hard time kind of filtering and processing for the first half hour after the film.
It's like every March Madness is the greatest March Madness, but it's really just recency effect. And so, like, there is something to be said for just walking out of it and sort of being clobbered for 3 hours with just this beautiful movie. And it is a beautiful film, and it does
really
a lot
is.
of really great and really magical things.
Yeah.
But
God, those set pieces were just fabulous.
yeah, but I think that you have to. I think I have to go with you guys on this and give it like a probably a 2. And for me, like it gets a 2 for some pretty specific story arc issues that I have. And so I will, this is going to go ahead and be the official Plotaholics spoiler warning, because we're probably about to get into some dicey territory with our spoiler. Because honestly, it doesn't take long for the movie to get into dicey territory with regards to spoilers.
Does not. It does not.
Hey man,
Yeah.
you know that movie that you're going to see?
Right, the Sixth Sense.
That guy is dead the whole time.
What? No!
This is the Plotaholic spoiler warning. Again, this is a Plotaholic spoiler warning. If you have not seen the movie we are discussing, continue listening at your own risk.
All right, guys. Act 1.
Woo! Oh my God.
I don't know. Okay, so first of all, let's talk cold. It's not even really a cold open, but it kind of is. Let's talk Hawkeye and his family.
Jesus. I was blubbering like a baby because you know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know. That's the worst part. You know what's gonna happen, but you're still ready to. It's kind of like when you're a kid and that relative has a dog that doesn't like kids. You know you're gonna get bit, but you are not ready when them teeth sink into your arm.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about how like visual choices are like made like that's a significant choice in the storytelling of a film and in visual media, and I want to have a moment for that for the dust in these what now is I guess 3 movies, right? Because you had it in the post-credit scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp as well.
Yes, you did.
Like this
Yes,
is
you
such
did.
a strong visual, and it's just kind of paralyzing when you see it happen because you're like, oh God, like they're like them too.
Yeah, it's like his daughter is like just vibrant and full of life. His boys are like, and keep in mind, these kids have grown up with us. They may not have been on screen in every movie, but we first meet them in Age of Ultron. And so these kids, we're emotionally invested in this family because Hawkeye has showed how important everyone's like, well, what good does Hawkeye prove? Hawkeye's the one that keeps the Avengers grounded in reality.
Yeah, he's like the moral of that.
He's the moral compass, but he also reminds, the god of thunder, the super soldier outside of time, the billionaire playboy philanthropist, and the rage monster and the master assassin, that there are mothers and fathers and children, there are families that need their protection. And Hawkeye is their constant reminder of that.
Yeah. Joe, what were you gonna
honestly, and can I just say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe,
That's okay.
did either one of you guys get that Pet Cemetery vibe when, and I'm not talking about the new one because I haven't seen the remake yet, but in the original, when the family is having the picnic and Gage is chasing the kite and Lewis is trying to catch him before he gets to the road and misses, it's like that terrible foreboding is there.
Oh no, there's definitely that. From the minute that the thing opens up on that family, you have nothing but dread because you know exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to not to jump way ahead, but there's a moment, you speaking about the dust, Shane, there's a moment where the dust plays this intricately almost swan song. We'll get hopefully you can make a note and we'll talk about the Thanos effect on the dust, but that visual really like hit it home of how great that special effect really is.
Yeah.
But I think that this opening is the opening we all expected. I think it's the one that it happened.
It's the logical choice.
Well, it also sets the stage for them to jump ahead and to get Ronan involved and bring everybody full circle, right? And try and have something to hold on to 5 years later, because they're chasing. Because what you find out is they're chasing him, and that's right. That's their only mission now, because they don't have any other people to chase.
Well, what's crazy too is, I think, start with Hawkeye, because how many of us, I know I was, well, where the hell's Hawkeye in this Infinity War thing? What people don't realize is that Hawkeye's on house arrest. He lives out in the middle of nowhere for a reason. He can't go anywhere. So even if he could be involved, he can't, because it's and plus Infinity War only took place over a matter of like a day. Yeah, if you really like a day and a half. It didn't. Yeah. It wasn't that much time. And even if news reports would be saying, "Hey, there's another something going on," there's not so much. At that point, details are sketchy right now. But then
but he's not. But he's also not allowed to leave. So it doesn't.
Yeah, he's not allowed to get. Yeah, he's not allowed to get involved.
And so there's probably something to be said here about what a bulky monster the timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been for Kevin Feige and company, but also like at times how beautifully they're able to sync these movies up, and have the events of one film overlap the events of another film in a really kind of interesting way, like with post-credit scenes usually is when they do that.
So, sort of like Ant-Man and the Wasp, it takes place before the movie takes place before the events of Infinity War,
right?
But the post-credit scene is like maybe a couple of days, maybe a week later, so that it syncs up. Scott Lang's story syncs up with Infinity War.
Yeah, it's wild because if you think like the last 20 minutes of Infinity War happen at the same time as the first 15 minutes of Endgame and the last 2 minutes of Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I know, right? It's amazing how they did that, and I think the primary reason why it was the logical step to start with Clint Barton is we need to remember how horrible we felt when Thanos won. I mean, we all three said it. When Peter Parker fades to dust at the end of Infinity War, it hits hard. And I think that the Russos, and give them loads of credit, they were like, hey, you remember how you got punched in the stomach when this 15-year-old kid got dusted?
I love how deep you get into this, how deeply you're thinking about this, but I honestly think it's just to set up the fact that they need a bad guy 5 years later, and that's what Clint Barton becomes. So I think it's just a plot device to get him to the next logical moment. But I love that idea. If that's really true, that's next level thinking and storytelling. That
right. So it's in literary studies we are cautioned against supposing what the authors are supposed to do are trying to do, right? Because unless the Russos come out and explicitly tell us what they're trying to do, we'll never really know. We can only know what the effect it has on the audience. And so the connection...
I do think it is to set a tone, though. I do think there is that, too. I think the tone has been set here, that we're about to get into something vile, and it's going to take us a while to...
And you need Hawkeye pushed over into that Ronin territory, and so it works on that level. It also works to remind the audience of the loss that they felt, maybe not explicitly like note for note Spider-Man, Peter Parker, sort of, like not like that explicitly, but hey, remember how bad this was, guys? Like it sort of gets back in the headspace,
Yeah, right. And that's exactly what I meant. We're getting put back right where we picked up. So really, when this comes out on home video, and you do your Marvel binge, you have to watch Infinity War before you watch Endgame. Now you have to, and it's like it's got to continue, and your heart hurts when you see that happen. And then, and I love how they focus on isolation he felt, because you figure he's out there in the middle of nowhere on acres upon acres of land to get away from everything. And now that sort of that oasis, away madness of the everyday world is now a tomb, because the three things that kept him together his family are gone.
Yeah.
And it is a really powerful ending for sure. But then we get with Tony and Nebula up there floating around in space, and I think Robert Downey Jr. does another excellent job in this movie.
Oh man,
I will.
When has he not? When has he
You
not?
know, it's funny because earlier I was watching a podcast, and they were talking about, would this movie reach any kind of award show kind of mentality, and they were all saying, Robert Downey Jr. should probably get a look at an actor nod for this, and this scene that you're about to talk about is a really good indicator of why.
Yeah, I think I think this movie is tough for award season because it's such an ensemble. But
not only that, but it's a comic book movie,
right,
in the eyes of people who are streamlining and trying to pigeonhole movies.
Yeah, and honestly, like and this is a topic for another day. But last year when the Oscars tried to select very popular films and whatever the other category was, do you remember that? Like how condescending can you be? So. I think that the Oscars would do well to pull themselves out of their own assholes, honestly.
Totally.
Regardless.
That's another topic.
So you have Tony up there, and he's recording this really fucking sad message, man, to Pepper Potts, and it's what we saw in the trailer. There's more to it clearly, but it is just this despondence. He is withering away, physically a shell of a man.
So great, and that was so great.
This goes along with what Brian was saying too. This is a big reminder from Infinity War that he and Nebula were the last two standing on this rock. They came in with like 8 guys. They had like 8 or 9 guys, and like all of them got dusted.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just him and Nebula in the end. Crazy to think about that.
Yeah. Now this scene does give me my first quibble, if I may be so bold as to quibble. And as much as I am a fan of Carol Danvers and Captain Marvel, throughout my entire anticipation for Endgame, I had hoped to see Tony give us that one last surprise, right? Like, save yourself from the cave one more time, Tony. Let's figure this out. That rescue felt a little safe. It felt a little easy for me.
Yeah, that was a Deus Ex Machina save
for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That was, and I mean, I tried to explain it away in my own head that the Captain Marvel post credit scene where she shows up at Avengers headquarters when her pager stops going off, and she wants to know where Fury is. The storyteller in me says that they explained to her the whole thing that was going on. Then they started trying to track Tony's signature. His output in space, and then they caught like this small thing. And it's like, oh, it could be anything. Carol's like, or it could be him. And just takes off.
But how many people are going to put that 2 and 2 together?
Here was my other thought is, I mean, they didn't they have Rocket Raccoon in that spaceship? Like,
no, he was on Earth. He was already on Earth.
He was already on Earth.
No, I know that, but they had access to space. With
because
him.
of Rocket.
Right.
Yeah, so Rocket could have even built something to maybe even pick up on Nebula to see if
they had been tracking Thanos' energy signature for 3 weeks, I guess.
Well, maybe that's what they did is they said, okay, well, we can't go out there. They're so deep into space, who can go out there, and maybe can Marvel go out there.
I think I would have liked, and I know that kind of hurts the storytelling. Like, it hurts the emotional impact of all of it because you have this hopelessness and all of that. But like, just give me a line of dialogue when they get back.
Yeah. Why can't Tony just say, "How did you find me? How did you find us?"
This feels like a cutscene. Like they had the scene in the beginning,
and they had to cut it.
Yeah, because it didn't flow. It didn't go right. It didn't go into the because you go from one emotion to the next emotion. You go from all these you go from Clint Barton's family gone to now Iron Man on the brink, and they're also kind of foreshadowing what's to come, right?
Right.
And they're doing. This is a filmmaking device, right? Because the first act is kind of foreshadowing what the last act is going to become for both, not only him but for Nebula as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that's just a filmmaking from a filmmaker's perspective. I think that's what the Russo brothers were engaging in, was just trying to foreshadow something. So they had to go. They probably had an exposition scene that kind of covered the whole.
Yeah,
but
and it doesn't really bother me. It doesn't bother me because I understand that the emotional magnitude of it is greater without like, hey, your friend sent me to get you or whatever, you know. Yeah. But at the same time, it just felt so easy for the guy that we've come to know as like the genius dude that can find a way, like can MacGyver his way out of anything.
Yeah, exactly.
To be saved. My problem
scraps in a cave.
Right. My problem isn't with Captain Marvel not having to do that. I think that she's a great addition to
and thinking about it, and I hate that people like hard on it, but I mean, if you think about it scientifically, so there's kind of that hole too, right? He's just kind of like laying there, and he's not convulsing or know. It doesn't look like he's losing oxygen, right? It doesn't play like that.
Yeah, it really just seems like he's gonna probably die
pass out.
Yeah, he's probably gonna die of malnourishment.
It's gonna be a combination of malnourishment, and he's just gonna go to sleep, run out of air while he's asleep, and just die all nice and peaceful like. Yeah. Meanwhile, Nebula and then you feel bad for Nebula because after Tony dies, she's alone.
Yeah,
like.
But that was a pretty cool moment that she puts him in the chair and lets him see the stars one more time. I think that really set a tone for Nebula's character too, which is what I really was really scared of in this, and it right away the supposed to address it. So I could have because I think they could have set Nebula wrong in this whole thing, and it would have almost been disastrous in my mind. But
I think this was Nebula's this movie was Nebula's coming out party, I think this movie showed that Nebula is an MVP in the Marvel Universe. She can hold her own.
Well, at least with the Guardians.
Oh, absolutely. She's going to be, I think that she's going to be really, really important to the Guardians and to the MCU as a whole as a character. And this movie is what did it. And that's what's her name, Karen Gillan? Kudos to her, man. Karen Gillan, man, kudos to her because she did amazing. And she's really, Nebula, you want to talk about character development over films. Nebula has grown.
Yeah, and Karen Gillan herself is blowing up. She's in the Jumanji movies, and she's been doing a lot of movies lately. So she's starting to blow up as an actress herself in Hollywood. So,
for me, she was the best part of Jumanji for me.
Yeah, to stay with this is testament to how well she appreciates the opportunity. So making the most of it.
We will definitely be returning to Nebula in a bit. Nebula and Gamora are going to get a ton of time from us in just a little while.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and get Tony back to Earth, and now let's go find Thanos, right?
Yeah.
Because so this moment in the first act.
Can I lead off by just saying this is the first holy shit fuck yeah moment when he says I aim for the head. That is like the moment that we are all waiting for, right? And that's what we were fucking waiting for, and it happened. And that was the first one.
So a lot of people are going to complain about Captain Marvel's role in this movie, maybe, but I love her arrogance. Like whenever she's she's like, let's go get Thanos. She's like, let's go kick his ass. I'm like, fuck yeah, Carol, let's go kick his ass. Let's just go.
Well, she has no reason to not be cocky. I mean, this is a woman who, 24 years ago, discovered who she was flying through ships like they're nothing, and beating up the Kree army, and then telling the Skrulls, I'm going to take you guys to a place to live now, because nobody can touch me, because I'm Carol Mofo Danvers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Represent. So of course she's going to be cocky.
I'm sorry, I already cursed on here. I apologize if I'm not supposed to curse.
Oh, no, we curse
No, you're allowed. No, we curse constantly.
Well, honestly, man, when you get the leftovers, from you get essentially you have Cap, you have Thor, you have the Marvel JV squad, and they all go to.
And this is also a really great moment because Rocket gets his due here, and Rocket starts to really shine at this. In this first act, Rocket is really the MVP of this first act, in my opinion, because he's at least in the comedy aspect of it. Yeah. You know, he's able to.
Has anyone ever done space travel? And like only him and them. Don't puke on my ship.
Yeah, he's excellent.
He really is.
So that scene where they go, I thought that we might go kill Thanos in the first 30 minutes of this movie, but I actually never thought that we actually would. You know, like,
yeah,
I thought that there's a possibility that that's how it was going to go, especially considering like the time travel element that we all assumed would be there as well. That we would get him out of the way, and we would have a different version of him later.
Yeah.
See, I didn't see that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I you know what I seriously thought? I thought that. All right, so they killed Thanos at the very beginning. I was seriously thinking he lied. I thought he lied about getting rid of the stones, and it was just another reality stone parlor trick when Thor took his head off. Or I was actually, and this was wishful thinking, and this totally went against everything I said in our previous show when we talked about this. I almost thought that if they were time traveling, Kang the Conqueror was going to show up and be like, "What in the hell are you doing? This is my thing. I'm time travel, bitches."
So that moment for me is really, really awesome.
It really is.
Because you have...
this is my moment. This moment is my first hole or intrepidation, because until the third act, they don't really explain what this really meant, and Thanos actually gives a great explanation to why this happened the way it happened, and so it was kind of wonky for me. I was like, okay, then how are they gonna get to the emotional aspect of trying to get everybody back now that he's gone, right? I mean, that was and then subsequent show that, you know, kind of laissez-faire kind of, you know, what's being accepted now as reality. And it's kind of like, it's just interesting how it goes from that to every point after. And so this was like the moment where I was like, okay, this is where we go off the rails, right?
Yeah.
So
well, let's hit the time jump 5 years in the future. And you know, I never realized that the Russo brothers would give me the Avengers movie that I've always wanted, and also the Big Lebowski sequel that I always wanted.
Yeah. Not only that, but they made ode to Stan Lee by being in their own movie. Joe Russo, shout out to Joe Russo, who was one of the guys in the circle with Captain America. He did his own Stan Lee moment right there.
He did.
I believe I read that he did that in tribute of Stan Lee.
Oh.
So.
Yeah. Well, that 5 years later, that time jump was really like upsetting, because it's like 5 years later. It's like, ow. It was like, and what's crazy is like, now at one point, and I think Sharon asked, why is everything all messed up? And it's like, well, think about it. Half of everything is gone.
Yeah.
Which means engineers, electricians, doctors,
janitorial
construction
staff.
workers. Half of everything is gone.
Because not only humans were gone, animals were gone too.
Yeah.
And the animals,
really
that's why he's
that.
like, I saw some whales. Well, whales are already starting to get on the endangered list. So if half of them are gone, you're not seeing them. That's a problem. So, I mean, I can understand why the world is not just human society is in chaos, but nature is in chaos.
Yeah. And I think that if we talk about tone for a minute, the Russo brothers really capture this tone. We keep coming back to this word dread. And there is that, but also just kind of hopelessness. And it's because I kept, all throughout Infinity War, I kept thinking of the word inevitability, right? Like it felt like they were fighting a losing battle the whole time, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
And so whenever Thanos says, you know, I am inevitable, I'm like, okay, not only is that the most badass thing I've ever heard a person say, but like, it's true, man. Like he unlike any other villain, it just felt like he was going to win. And at times it kind of felt like he was going to win again.
Yeah. And that's the one thing about Thanos, is that the villain wins. There's only been How many other times did a villain just win? Oh, I know. Episode
Darth Vader.
3.
Darth Vader.
Yeah, episode 3, the villain won. In episode 3.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even Vader that won. It was Palpatine that won.
Palpatine
got all
he also if you technically he won an Empire Strikes Back too, right?
Because
he froze Han, he got Luke to change his mind about things, you know. So he left that movie
and then scooped Luke's hand off. So this is 3 movies where the bad guy wins.
Well, and we can talk about how bad
how about the Usual Suspects? Usual Suspects is one of those too. Kaiser Sose wins.
Well, okay, so Usual Suspects throws a wrench into what I was going to say, but what I was going to say is that typically in at least in like hero's journey type stories, you have a serialized storytelling or episodic storytelling, and so it's not unusual, I think, for either the first chapter if you have 2 or the middle chapter if you have 3 for the hero to at least suffer some loss and the villain to appear to have the upper hand, you know? Because even at the end of The Last Jedi, even though all of the Resistance fighters got away, they still only had like 20 people left. You know, like there was still a sense of like great loss, and Luke, you know, dies supposedly and all of that stuff. So like The Last Jedi is another middle chapter that gives us that same sense of intense loss, you know?
Yeah,
Touché.
but
That's a good point.
I think Infinity War really set the standard though for massive loss.
Oh,
you
God.
know, because like
Half of everything.
Because even in the Star Wars films that we're talking about, and even in Usual Suspects, only 6 guys really get it in the Usual Suspects. I mean, there's a bunch of Colombians that get it that we don't meet, but whatever. But you know, with Star Wars, there's a couple Ewoks that get. Well, that's the 3rd movie though, right? So there's not a massive loss. You know, there's just dread.
Well, Thanos is the ultimate ex-wife. Thanos is the ultimate ex-wife because he walked away with half.
He's taking everything. I mean, he's taking half of everything anyway.
Yeah,
exactly.
He ain't gonna wait. He ain't gonna wait for the appeal. He just did it.
Oh hell no! He's like scoop done.
Yeah,
right. But he's also the ex-wife that doesn't want it all. He just takes it all and sets it on fire.
Yeah. He's Angela Bassett and he's Angela Bassett and waiting to exhale. Yeah, it's like, you know what? I'm just taking it because I can.
Yeah. Well, you know, he is inevitable.
He is.
But I've been saying that to my students this week. I'm like,
I am inevitable.
So let's see. Now we have a second act that gets a little bogged down in the storytelling. I don't have a problem with the pacing of the second act because again, it does feel hopeless, and it should feel hopeless for a little while.
Well, the one thing I want to say too before we jump there, how fitting is it that Steve Rogers is leading a support group where before. You know, this is a guy who, you know, back in World War II, they didn't have those.
Yeah.
And then when he first really meets and gets to know Sam Wilson is running a support group. And he's sort of like, even there, he's feeling out of place. And Sam Wilson is counseling him. And now Cap is like, you know, this is Cap coming full circle right there. I think this is when Cap really finally embraces the new world that he's in.
Can I see it from a filmmaker's perspective? Again, this is foreshadowing because it leads to Cap being okay with his lot in life. It shows that he's able to adapt and he can just be a person and be who he, you know, just be somebody in a world of somebodies. You know, he doesn't have to be Captain America. And this is kind of like the introduction to that because we all know the ending. You know, we're going to talk about that. But so it's that subtle foreshadowing that the Russo brothers do again with this character. He does it back to back too. He does it with Tony Stark, and then he does it with Steve Rogers, which again leads to the whole idea that this was their story from the beginning. So they're setting that tone right from the beginning with that. That's excellent.
It absolutely is, and you're right. And by all accounts, it appears that we're going to continue to have a presence. I assume that this movie would be sent off for the big 3, but it looks like it's still around. So it absolutely makes sense that we would get that bookend, the bookends of Tony and Cap at the beginning and at the end. Those echoes.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree.
So the big event of the second act is Ant-Man coming out of the back of that hoopty.
Oh God.
And
in the only way Ant-Man can come back in this movie, right? I mean, that's
right.
I've heard a lot of people fuss about the rat walking across.
Oh, whatever.
I mean, I think that was great because that's just one of those
perfect. It's tone of Ant-Man.
Right.
Well, not only just that, but it's so mundane, and it's one of those things that, once again, where Doctor Strange is like, we need all of this to happen to win.
It's also
and everything had to happen that way.
It's also one of those things where, like, eventually in the arc of the universe, a rat was going to walk through that van. Like, it's just like the law of averages. So whether it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now or 50 years from now, a rat was going to walk through that van. That's just how it works.
My one question is, who the fuck found the van and put it in a compound?
That was going to be my next question.
Right.
Where was Luis?
And didn't
where was
take
Luis
anything
and the
out of
other
it?
guys? Yeah, where was Luis and the other guys? Or was it Cassie and her? And where was Cassie's mom and stepdad?
And didn't somebody just realize that? And who wouldn't open the back of the van?
Right.
And that's the other thing, right? I mean, because it was probably still generating its power, right? So if you had opened the back of the van, he would have probably escaped from that, too. So there's a little bit of dislodging logic here in that respect.
Yeah, and apparently, like you guys are kind of alluding to without saying it, apparently everybody that Ant-Man knew, except for his daughter, was taken in the decimation. Like everybody.
Yeah, which is crazy. And you got to feel bad for Cassie because this poor girl's been like, who's she been with for the last 5 years?
Right.
She's probably shacking up with that bicycle kid that wouldn't talk to him at all when he was riding down the street.
Something tells me that Michael Payne just survived, but we just didn't get to see him. He probably got cut from the movie.
I don't think Luis would have been able to be the official scribe of everything that happened because it just wouldn't. You just didn't want to laugh. So what happened, right? My cousin Ignacio, he just faded to ash while we were at this wine tasting, right? And it was terrible because there was this piece of cheddar cheese that was divine, and he got the last piece, and I was gonna eat it, but it had all of his dust all over it.
Honestly, I want that commentary on the DVD.
Yeah,
I get him to to do the commentary for the whole movie. I'll buy the DVD
awesome.
for sure.
I want Michael Pena to narrate the entire MCU to this point.
In 5 minutes.
Right. Everything has to be zoomed. Everything has to be time lapse, right?
And just to see everyone mouthing his words.
Yes.
That was the best part.
I will give that scene a lot of credit. That was a very fun scene in that movie that I didn't really care for all that much.
I think that like Ant-Man, the Ant-Man movies are a little bit whatever for me. They're fun, but they blow my brain off. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're tongue in cheek heist films.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think Paul Rudd is charming, and we talked about last week on the video. You can skate for a little while on charisma,
right?
While you're trying to figure everything else out, So
right, and he plays the dumb foil in this movie especially well because he's the guy that kind of has the catalyst to the plan, right, and the idea, and he's so stupefied that he doesn't know how to kind of relay it and get it out there, to them.
What irks me off about that aspect is he's an electronic engineer. The man is a genius, but he's a goof. Like they regulate him to a clown, and I kind of wish that they would do more with giving respect to his intelligence instead of just making him a clown.
I get what you're saying, but I also feel like he is a genius in the movies. He's a funny genius, and he is a little goofy. But he's also not Tony Stark or Bruce Banner. Of course he should default to those guys.
He's a genius when it comes to street smarts, but when it comes to book smarts, he's a few decks short.
But he's an electrical engineer. He could probably go up because Bruce is a genius at gamma radiation. He should be able to walk up and look at Bruce's setup and be like, well, I see what you did here, but you could have done this. It might have helped. It might help with your output. Yeah, that is right. I didn't think of that. Sort of like with Shuri, how Shuri's like, why didn't you just connect the synapses, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
He
Now, I will say this.
Think about it.
When we found out that Shuri had been decimated, I was like, yeah, this time travel thing is going to take a few minutes. If she'd been around, she could have just been like, this, that over there. Here we go.
She would have already had it done.
Right.
They're like, all right, we're going to go in time. Shuri's like, bitches, I already got this.
Yeah.
Here, look. And I actually made a new gauntlet, too. What?
Yeah.
So
while you're at it, I made an Earth 2.
Yeah.
So let's talk about...
And I replaced Wakanda.
It's now Mick Wakanda's.
So I want to talk about the time travel element, and I don't want to get too bogged down in the lore of it, but this was
the Back to the Future.
this was Now I'll say that I appreciate any movie that is embarking on something that is going to be dicey in terms of storytelling. Whenever they make nods to the things that have tried it before, and then also make fun of those things, and also make it explicit how their version of that thing is going to be different from the other versions of that thing.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated the idea that when you go back in time, you're not necessarily messing up the future because the past is now your new present. Like you're just living in a loop, essentially.
Yeah.
Like the things that have happened in your past will still have happened to you.
Like, I'm not a genius in it, but I do believe that's quantum physics in a nutshell, right?
Right,
I mean, that is the truth. That's a truism.
Right, and I like that's the way that they went, as opposed to like, oh well, like, you know, your mom and dad never met, now you're gonna disappear, you know, like.
Yeah.
So I liked the idea of that. I wanted to ask you guys, because it came up a little bit in passing last week, what your thoughts are, you know, on the Hulk banner in this movie.
I didn't like. I had issues. Part of it, and I have to fast forward a little. We barely see him in the final battle, which pisses me off. And I was never a big fan of the Professor Hulk storyline in the comics because Professor Hulk has serious limitations versus Savage Hulk. And I mean, I understand why they did it, but
I felt like
was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I wasn't like I was more like I'm exacerbated with what they did. You know, he doesn't even say how he did. He's just like, oh yeah, we figured it out.
That's my problem with it. Was that like 5 years
like,
later,
oh really?
He just is that.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
This is again accelerating a timeline, and probably there was a scene before it that they cut that they explained something like this.
Yeah,
but
because they do that, I think that we really miss out on something that fans are looking forward to.
I totally agree, and it bogs down the set a little bit because of that too. And I also think that they're trying so hard to capture the magic of Ant-Man and Ragnarok in the comedy aspect here that they're playing up. They're playing Professor Hulk as a goof almost. It's almost he's very goofy and very playful and cheerful. And Bruce Banner is not a very playful and cheerful guy. He's an analytic.
No, he's not.
He's an analytic professor.
Analytic.
Yeah,
right.
And he knows how the point why there's the Hulk and Bruce Banner, right? I mean, so to have this kind of goofy guy, it works in only one scene when they first back and he's smashing stuff, and that was pretty funny. But that's the only time I laughed at this. I was laughing at him more than I was laughing with him, and this is
same here.
And I think that was off-putting a lot.
I agree. I really, this was the time that, and I love Mark Ruffalo. This is the one time where I felt like it should have been someone else. Even I think Edward Norton might have been able to do a little bit more.
I don't know if it would need to be someone else. It just need to be taken a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, I felt like Ruffalo did exactly what the Russos asked him to do, and I think that he did it. I think he did a fine job doing what they asked him to do. I just don't like that they asked him to do that thing.
I agree.
And I'm also not real sold on, like, I think that the motion capture on Thanos looks so good. But the motion capture on Bruce did not look that great in this to me.
No, it didn't. It was very, very cheese. It was very cheese.
I agree with that.
And I think that was the one part for me where it's like, you know what? I don't approve. You know, that was one of those spots for me where I would have had to have taken a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
just
Yeah.
Hulk's story arc here has been a point of contention, and Thor's storyline has also been a point of contention. And I know that Brian, you totally are on board. I think you're on board with this Thor storyline.
I really am.
I'm on board.
Lebowski too, baby.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I thought, well, because you get this guy, you get the God of Thunder, who is very, very proud, and he has really sort of accepted this mantle of Earth's protector. Oh, Loki, you know the Earth is under my protection. You know, he feels that. He's for real with that. And not only did he fail Earth and fail Asgard, but he was taunted as well. And he knew he screwed up.
He felt Fred.
He lost everything. And it was all because he had decided, I have to look my enemy in the eye before I kill him. You know, it's like, of course, now he's racked with survivor's guilt. Throw in the fact that he even admitted that in 1,500 years, he's killed so many people. That's going to weigh on you after a while with all of that happening.
And I gotta say, and I may be in the minority here, and everybody may disagree with me, but these moments when they first go to Asgard and check him out and look at him are the most heart-wrenching moments for me, because you're looking at a guy in pain. You know, you're looking at this guy and he's Chris Hemsworth. This is Chris Hemsworth's best acting in this 10 minutes. He does an amazing acting job in these 10 minutes that I've seen him do in any movie anywhere.
Absolutely.
This was so amazing. Agree. It was so amazing to watch him laugh off this pain that he was feeling, and you know, Rene Russo, the moment with Rene Russo really brought that all full circle, and it's the first time you get an impressive arc with Thor, right? It's the first really taste of something that's not. Thor, it seems to me, has always been like the displaced. He's like the guy in hockey that you bring out to start a fight. Yeah. You know, he's not the guy that scores the goals. He's not the guy that gets asked all the questions in the interviews. He's the guy that you send out there to punch another guy and start something, make something happen.
He's the gun.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the thug Glatt.
And here he is the emotional core of why they need to do this again, you know. And it's so amazing to me that it came from Chris Hemsworth in this moment, and they let him loose, and he delivered.
And shout out to Tessa Thompson too, because it's Valkyrie, because it's like she understands what he's going through, because that was her. That was her in Thor Ragnarok. That's exactly how she was.
I am so. You know, I know we're going to probably get to Tessa Thompson shine in a movie in a role on her own. I think she's one of the ones that I think I'm touting as somebody who is going to really step out and be something from into the next phases of this universe.
I hope so. I really hope so, because Valkyrie is an amazing character, and I really think that she needs to be given the opportunity to shine in the MCU. And I love the fact that I honestly. I would love to see a Marvel Sirens with like the women of the MCU coming together in a film.
I believe that's on the horizon. I think a version of that's coming.
I think they teased that. They teased that.
But there's one woman that wasn't there, that has not been introduced yet, that has to be. Can either of you guess who that is?
Is it She-Hulk?
Yes, it is. We need She-Hulk. I want She-Hulk.
I think she's coming. But one last thing on this Thor moment, and what made it so powerful in my opinion is he killed Thanos. He took his head off, you know?
Yeah.
And to see that didn't heal him, that he was still feeling pain. Yeah, exactly. Because like what was it all for, right? And and you know, and it's played like his weight and his slobbishness and everything. It's sort of played for laughs a little bit, but underneath that is like real pain and and substance abuse. You know, like he's drinking himself numb. So
and you know what? And I was the guy that did that. So I mean, as soon as I saw it, I recognized it. I've done that. I've tried to drink to numb thoughts and feelings. And what's crazy is that everyone in the theater laughing at it. And I mean, I chuckled too. I'm not going to lie. I did find it humorous. But you look at it deeper, it's not funny.
I think that people that laugh at it saw him as like oh, Thor's retired.
I can tell you in the screening I saw, when Rene Russo has that heartfelt moment with him, it was deathly silent. It was. I think it registered.
It was silent. It was silent for us too.
Yeah, that
people were laughing up until that point, and then at that point, people were starting to realize that here's a guy that just needed his mom and needed somebody to reassure him that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is that the guy that sat next to me, I was not excited for him to sit down because I thought he was just going to be really annoying and like ruin the movie for me. But when Rene Russo came on screen and Thor's talking to her, he had tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
And I think that it touched him in a way. And, it touched all of us in a way because how many of us as adults, three of us, we're grown men in our own, we're fine. We've got our place in this world. But how many times do you just go to a parental figure and just become a child again?
Well, I think that is thematically kind of a big deal in the centerpiece of this film. Because
Hells yeah.
Because you have everybody goes back in time and has this moment with maybe not a parental figure, but although that is the case for Thor and for Tony, but they connect with somebody from their past that was incredibly important to them.
And again, a filmmaking device. I'm sorry, guys. I
No,
keep doing
absolutely.
This.
That's why you're here, man.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that's why we have you here.
Well, other than my charming wit and everything else, right? But
and your killer hat that nobody can see.
Oh, that hat!
I'm not wearing it, by the way. I'm bald right now.
Whoa!
But yeah. So this is something that I really noticed very mightily in the filmmaking aspect of this is the idea that when everybody goes back, they're touched by a loved one and they almost make the decision to stay.
Yeah.
And the only one that doesn't is Captain America, because I think, again, we're foreshadowing something, but Captain America doesn't come in contact with his other. He just sees her from a distance. And that is an amazing, amazing moment, because that is the moment I knew that that's what his fate was going to be, right?
Yeah.
If he would have spoke to her, he would have stayed if he spoke to her.
I think
in his mind, him said the mission.
Yeah, and I think that the idea that I think Thor tried not to speak to his mother, but his mother caught him, and I think that Tony wasn't afraid to speak to his dad because his dad didn't exist anymore, right? Because his dad has passed away, so he needed that fatherly advice. So he sought. He ran into him, but he sought, once he realized that he wasn't heard anything with the timeline, he sought that advice from him because that was the person that he admired and thought of at his moment, And
he was always trying to please, and he was always trying to please him.
And I think both of them had that moment because of that, for that reason, and in different ways. And I think that again, it foreshadowed everything I knew that was going to happen to Captain America, because he was so about the mission that he refused to compromise the mission by engaging in contact with Agent Carter,
and it really would have made their mission a lot easier if he would have.
Yeah, and well, here's the thing, right? The moment after, what is the next scene? He goes and grabs Pym's stuff, right? How many does he grab? He's like 2 or 3, right? And he grabbed like 20
4.
of them.
Yeah, he definitely did the math. He knew how many he needed.
Yep.
And you know what? Taking a quick backtrack, when they go back to the Battle of New York, now this part is where Bruce gets the chance to shine. And for me, it kind of forgives the clown. Yeah. Is Bruce's interaction with the Ancient One. That saved Bruce Banner for me.
I agree. 100% I agree.
I agree.
I mean, Tilda Swinton, this woman is fantabulous.
Yeah.
She is her presence is so amazing. Like, she just has this aura about her. And the only other woman in Hollywood, and this is nothing against the ladies in our MCU or other women in Hollywood, but the only other woman in Hollywood, I think, that sort of has that presence about her is Cate Blanchett.
Yeah,
where it's like, it doesn't matter what her gender is.
Yeah, it's a good call.
She is a superior individual. She has that swag.
I think Sandra Bullock has it to an extent too, but she's just not as good an actor as the two of them. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Sandra Bullock has it in her own way, but there's just something about Tilda Swinton and Cate Blanchett that they're just like superior individuals. And I mean, even in as much as I respect Meryl Streep, hers is from a different time as well. These two women that I'm speaking about right now, like just
they'll probably both tell you there's no them without Meryl Streep though. But you
absolutely, and I can't, and I will agree with that. But I mean, Tilda Swinton in that scene, I swear, you put her in a movie with anybody, and she's more than just holding her own.
God, and she was fantastic in Doctor Strange. She was fantastic in that movie.
Really was, and even with the accusations of whitewashing and blah blah, I can't see anyone else as the Ancient One but her.
Yeah, no.
She carries that. She carries that persona, that air of, yeah, I'm superior, but I'm not a piece of shit about it.
Yeah.
This scene is one of the scenes for me that makes Infinity War a better movie for having existed. Like this scene shows us without doubt, and we all knew that when Doctor Strange gives up the Time Stone in the Infinity War, he did it for a reason. But to see her realize that and understand that, like, not only did he give it up for a reason, but he had to know that these people would find a way to come back in time in order to get hers. Like,
right.
And that to me is one of those beats of this movie that, and there are a lot of them, but this is just one example where Infinity War is a better movie for this movie having been made.
And this movie is smarter because we recognize that she recognizes that,
right?
And it's just one little, it's that unspoken moment, right? And so this movie automatically goes up a level in its own intelligence because we're seeing something that is not being overtly thrown at us,
right?
That we're trying to figure out, and she figures out.
It's something that is not being overtly thrown at us, but it also doesn't have to be, aka. Carol Danvers, how did you know Tony Stark was stuck in that spaceship, right? Like that's a different sort of unspoken thing, you know, like in this case, absolutely. It's in her character as a master of the mystics, you know, like it's like, that's kind of what they do, you know. If Doctor Strange had flown up there and found Tony Stark in a spaceship, I wouldn't have questioned it nearly as much. But Carol Danvers is just a really strong battery. She doesn't have that kind of knowledge.
No, she doesn't. And I think what was great is that the Ancient One was there, and she kept her distance because she knew, and it was like,
well, she doesn't. She dies, so she's not.
Yeah, she dies. But I mean, she knew that when she's protecting New York alongside the Avengers without their knowledge, it's like. Yeah. She knew there was a reason for it, and then when Hulk shows up, she's not even surprised.
Right? She says that guy, you're 5 years too soon.
Yeah, exactly.
I love how she punched him out of his body.
Yeah, that's
just
cool.
like she did to Strange.
Yeah,
and then just kept his soul there. Like, so now we're gonna have a discussion,
right,
Mr. Big Pants.
So we gotta get to this third act. So we gather up all the Infinity Stones, and oh my God, we haven't even freaking talked about Gamora and Nebula yet.
The Gamora.
Well, and the moment
Nebula
and the first tragic moment as well in the second act. With Hawkeye and Black Widow.
God,
see that was really tough. That was really hard, and it's like, and she is actually dead. She's not coming back.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
And
it's hard. It's hard to handle.
This is
where the plot people, the folks who are trying to poke holes in this, start to poke holes in it, right? Because of Gamora. So,
well, okay.
I don't see how you can't.
I do want to talk about the Hawkeye Black Widow thing just for a second, because that was heart-wrenching, and I did have a thought, and I don't think that I have it anymore.
Yes, you do.
I don't know, man. I think it's just gone. There's just so much to talk about, and
I'll say this to Joe. I'll give you a few seconds to pull back. I don't understand how people have this issue with.
I don't
what
either,
happened with
Brian.
the Soul
I'm just
Stone.
saying that people
it makes
do.
no sense.
You know?
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't understand those people. Why did Gamora come? Well, no, Gamora's back because it's past Gamora.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's not like our Gamora.
Well, they missed the whole
It's
idea
not like
of
Gamora Prime.
Yeah, and they missed the whole idea that we talked about earlier about the different time travel kind of idea. This is quantum physics. It's not time travel in the sense that we're all used to time travel.
Right.
And I think people are so set in their ways about time travel that they just think it's one way, but it's not.
Right.
And so, and the other idea is the Soul Stone didn't have Gamora's soul at that point, because they're going back in time. So this is before Gamora is part of the Soul Stone.
Exactly.
So this is before all of that. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. But people, this has been I've seen this. This is the one thing that people start to try and. This is where they try to really poke at it, and I'm just like, I don't see how you can get to that conclusion. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so that reminded me of what I wanted to say. And
there you go. I told you.
Yep. What I wanted to say is this: I liked that this movie didn't back down from Dead is Dead, because to me, this was the hill I was ready to die on, right? Because I was like, okay, if we get to Endgame and whoever, Captain Marvel shows up and beats the shit out of Thanos and undoes the snap and everybody's back like nothing happened, then there are no stakes. But
exactly
in this case, Loki, dead is dead. And they made it really clear whenever Bruce was going to do this, was going to undo the snap, that it really only people went snap, right? Like, don't bring anybody else back.
Yeah.
Only undo.
And he even admits he tried. Remember, he said something about how he tried and he couldn't do it.
He tried to do it, and he just couldn't. And that's probably why granted, using the stones takes a toll, but I think him trying is what really hurt him.
And when they and I think this also, to your point, Shane, earlier, this makes Infinity War a better movie,
right?
Because we know when they land on this rock, what's about to happen, right? We know how they have to get the Soul Stone. So one of them has to sacrifice their life, and it's just a matter of who do we figure out sacrifices their life, right? So,
and I give Natasha and I give Scarlett Johansson. This was some of Scarlett Johansson. This movie was, another one. Scarlett Johansson really, she brought Black Widow full circle. And it's like, totally, and she knew they were going to succeed. And that's why she insisted on dying. Because it's like, you, Clint, have to go back to your family. And it's the classic man versus woman thinking. I'm hurting now. Well, they're not going to be hurting when we succeed.
In that moment where they're hanging there, and she goes, "It's okay, it's okay." That moment was like, I said, oh, "That's awesome, amazing,
Stop saying that. Stop saying that. Stop saying that. It's not okay."
Yeah.
And then she just, oh man, oh wow.
We got to get to this third act.
Yeah.
And now,
can we just before we do? Can I just say,
absolutely.
Thanos is even more terrifying this time around, because now he angry.
Has the knowledge.
But he's angry now.
Yeah,
it's like you. It's almost like I can hear him saying, "You ungrateful children."
Yeah,
I sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay. Now, see, in Infinity War, Thanos wasn't angry. He was driven to a goal. Now he is pissed off, and he is taking it out on everybody.
Yeah,
I wanted to say something about his character. When we got to the end of Infinity War, a ton of reviews were like, Thanos is the protagonist of this movie. Like his aims were pure, his means were maybe kind of corrupt, but he had a noble goal. But the Russo brothers worked really hard to make sure that he was a villain this time.
Yes.
That he, like you said, that he was pissed, and that when he said, you know, I was going from planet to planet and it was not personal, but this time with your planet, I'm gonna enjoy it. And and you're like, bitch, this is Earth. Like, so yeah, so they worked hard.
Well, when he said this time I'm gonna enjoy it, I'm like, oh
yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's real now. Now it's real.
So we get the big action set piece at the end, and the way it opens is, I think, so like when Thanos lands and he sits out there on that rock, and Thor, Iron Man, and Cap all walk out there and they're looking at him.
You couldn't deal with your failure.
All of that,
once again, me.
Absolutely. That moment is like, I'm like, I know that we're going to get Roddy back eventually for this big fight, but I'm going to enjoy the shit out of just watching these three dudes beat up on Thanos for a little while, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a beautifully shot fight sequence. And this is where we get some of your favorite moments, Joe and Brian, specifically the Cap Mjolnir moment.
Oh my God.
And I totally agree with Katie when she said this. I totally agree with her that it's Thor's reaction to the moment that made it so great, right? Yeah. I mean that was the deal, right? Yeah.
Well, because the thing is, in Age of Ultron, Thor knew that Steve was going to lift it, but the thing was, and this was my point, and I felt that I made it quite well. Steve was like, you know what? I don't need it. Yeah. I'm fine the way I am. And I think that is why he's able to wield Mjolnir, because he didn't want it. He had no desire.
And like I said to you guys, that was the biggest pop of the movie at that point.
Absolutely.
Everybody.
Right. It was wild, man. And you talk, and here's a really good example of patience and storytelling. To wait and have Cap have that moment in this movie, like how many times were they tempted, before to have that moment, but to have it but to show that all the way back in Ultron and then wait this long is such a nice moment in pacing and storytelling and payoff.
Absolutely.
And this is the first moment too in the third act where you see Thanos he's thinking 2 steps ahead, and he already knew that he had his army on his way, and so he wasn't concerned about this fight as much as the three of them were. Yeah. They were really into it. He was kind of just like, flicking them off, or until he piss him off, and then he gets into the fight a little bit. But this is the first moment where you see his arrogance, and then it starts to snowball from there. And that's what makes the third act so great, right? You have that one moment that turns it and the snowball. Yeah,
and what's so interesting about it, man, is that he, even at this point, like you've got these guys on him, and they get some shots in, and you're like, oh, it's going to be different this time. But man, every time he's able to turn it around on them, and get the upper hand again, and you're like, no, I don't know. This guy is such a badass.
And and what's great, and once again, this is to show that this movie makes Infinity War even better, because every time you think that they're getting an upper hand, he flips the tables, and it's like, oh crap, he's a win again.
Yeah,
he's a great chess player.
He is.
He truly is. And you know what? There's a lot of time where he's almost like he's pulling them an Ali rope-a-dope, where he's just letting them wear themselves out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Yep,
and then you start to hear Cap, Cap on your left, and I was like, oh. And when I saw that portal open, that first portal,
Black Panther, baby,
Black Panther, and then Sam Wilson, and it's just, I'm like,
I'm telling you, like when I saw Black Panther walk out of that first portal, I could have run through a wall. I was like, let's do this. I was like, let's go.
Oh, and you know what I screamed, and you know what I said in the theater? I'm like, you're fucked now.
Yeah. Shout out to the Russo brothers. They got every single person a moment on screen.
Yeah.
Single Marvel
everyone
character
got their moment. Except the Hulk.
Oh,
and Nick Fury too. I don't think we see Nick Fury.
Nick Fury. We didn't see him in the battle either.
No.
But I mean, but I'll tell you something right now. I love the fact that Thanos is like, whatever, and then all of these portals open, and then he's like, oh shit,
yeah,
this isn't going to be as easy as I thought, and everyone's just coming out of, everyone's just showing up.
And there's this
And
great
it's-
moment between Strange and Wong where Strange is like, is that everybody? And Wong's like, did you want more?
More? Yeah. And you know what? To me, that was a little nod to Wong's like, well, I could have got the mutants and the Fantastic Four, but I figured I would stop with this.
But yeah, and you know,
And then the moment that we have to talk about with Peter Parker, right?
I was just getting ready to say,
there you go.
that made me cry. I'm talking ugly cry.
That was
because I ugly cried when Peter died.
When he swang in there for his first appearance, that was one of the biggest applause moments in my theater.
And did you notice? Now Tony was really happy being a father to Morgan, and that was some of the best like parent to child act that I've seen in a movie. Was him with his daughter. Kudos.
I think they all have that. I think Clint had that with his daughter though too.
Yeah.
He did, but it was different, and I think that I made it more personal because I don't have a daughter, so it really the way I see him interacting with her is how I've always saw with the daughter if I ever had one. But there was still a part of him that just he forced himself to be completely fulfilled, and then he saw that picture of Peter, and then he realized that he had a son that he lost. And then when he sees Peter, it's like he's reinvigorated. It's like, I'm really whooping your ass because you took my kid from me. And oh my God, I'm getting chills even now.
Yeah,
just picturing it.
And we've got to bounce through this thing because I want to give the end its due diligence. We alluded to the moment in the fight where all of the women popped up together. As like
you
a really
took everything from
moment.
Me. I don't know you.
Freaking tell it, which man, she was my MVP. That chick made me want to just like punch people. Like
I finally accept Elizabeth Olsen. I finally accept her because there was always a little bit of me that just was like there was a little bit of an Age of Ultron where I'm like, okay, and then I'm like, nah. You know what I mean? She would taper, but now it's
This is a great moment, but we skipped over the moment, right? Come on now. Avengers Assemble, man.
You know what?
That's right,
I didn't want I needed to take a breath because I didn't want to start crying because when he said Avengers Assemble, if you thought that I was marking out when everyone showed up, I really marked out when he said Avengers Assemble, and I'm like, I was getting ready. I was ready to run through the screen because I thought I had to fight.
Right, there you go. Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things that this movie did so well. Is there was an immense amount of fan service, but it never felt like
it never
felt like forced.
Yeah,
it wasn't forced. And you know what? Disney. Disney. When we're doing the Star Wars, this is how you do it.
Yeah,
this is how you do it, Mr. Feige.
I will say there's a moment in Last Jedi that is very poignant in that when she lifts the rocks. Mm-hmm. That's to me that moment too. That was a very natural moment and there was no dialogue, but
it didn't need dialogue.
But that was the moment. And of course the moment where he realizes that Mark Hamill's he realizes Luke Skywalker is a hologram too. That was also one of those moments in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But this movie was full of fan service.
Yeah.
But it never felt like pandering, which was nice. Well, no, I read an article that argued that the women moment, that the real power moment was pandering, but the women in my theater loved it. And everyone I've talked to loved it. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, who wrote
they had to get their moment too. I mean, all those women had to get their moment too. They hadn't had a moment yet.
Right.
You know?
Not to mention the fact that there's still a lot of men out there that can't handle the fact that women aren't going to be the damsels in distresses anymore.
No. Yeah.
And what's so crazy is that they haven't been the damsel in distress exclusively in comics in a long time.
Exactly.
Like, these female characters have existed in the comic book universe for a long time.
Now? Yeah. I mean, one of the most popular characters right now is Spider-Gwen.
Right.
For God's sake.
Absolutely.
And And
Captain Marvel's from the 70s East. So
Yeah.
And Sue Storm has been a very important staple in Marvel Comics since. Granted, they came out in the 60s, but she was kind of, typical female for that time. But once the 70s came, it was a whole different ballgame. When Reed Richards had to step away from the team, she stepped up.
Yeah.
So I think what it is just it's a bunch of He-Man woman haters that just they want to shit on something. They
I think there's people. I think people just don't like cliche, and I think that moment was a little cliche, but it wasn't. But it was necessary. It was a necessary moment, and I think it was more necessary because these women that didn't have their moment yet, and everybody in the MCU gets a moment in this movie, and that was their moment. So it was just a natural progression for that character to this character to get their moment, and it just happened to be that way.
Yeah,
and I didn't feel like it was cliche because for me the cliche is, I'm a woman. I don't need a man.
True,
and this was nah.
Well, cliche might be the wrong word, but
I understood where you were coming from. It's just that for me, that's the way I see the cliche. Kind of, and I hate to do it because I love the character, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she sort of gets that every now and again. I'm a woman and I don't need a man. To blah blah. It's like no, but at the same token, she does need help because two of her closest allies are males.
One of my favorite moments in the movie of all time is Heroine in Return of the King when she slays the Shadow King, right? And, and he goes, "No man can kill me. I am no man." that was cliche, but that was an awesome moment.
But I love the fact that the women of the MCU got to get their fight on.
I did too.
And I like the fact though that Captain Marvel, she gets that little flirt with Peter. Hi, Peter Parker. I'm like, I'm a 12-year-old boy again. And the older girl noticed me.
Well, and also what was interesting about Captain Marvel is that this time, Thanos wasn't so easy to beat up. They had in hand-to-hand combat. So as long as she can zoom around and be a ball of energy, she can, she can jack some stuff up. But hand-to-hand combat,
she has to stand there and battle. Thanos is a superior hand-to-hand combatant, and he showed her that. He was like, look, little girl, you may make bright lights and break ships, but I can still whoop your ass.
I want to have we've got to get to the big deal here, but from all of this we get to the Thanksgiving backyard football game where they try to get the gauntlet across the battlefield back to the hoopty, and things look like they're not going to go so well because Thanos gets the gauntlet again, and Tony.
And I'm like, oh shit!
And as is fitting because Tony was one of the last guys to try to fight him before he came to Earth in Infinity War, and so we have a sort of like a replay of that moment,
right?
And it was so poetic because in Infinity War, whenever Thanos stabs Iron Man.
Yeah.
And he leans up against that rock. He says, Thanos tells him, he says, "You have my respect." And he says, "When half of them are gone, I hope they remember you."
Yeah.
And that line kept echoing in my brain the whole time this fight was happening. And that's sort of when I knew what was coming,
Well, let's talk about the moment right before it because that is super important. The moment when he turns to Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange puts up the one finger.
Yeah.
We all know at that moment what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just so amazing that was not a line of dialogue that drove that moment. It was the only time in the holy shit moments that you didn't have a line of dialogue.
That's why I think that Doctor Strange might be one of the best written characters. Because he just has he just has this mystery about him, and so much of his most poignant lines aren't spoken.
And then also with Benedict Cumberbatch, his acting, because you can see it all in his eyes, right? You see the tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
He knows what's about to happen.
Absolutely.
That's so crazy.
And especially when you couple that moment with the one that happens just a few minutes earlier where Tony says, "Come on, Doc, is this the one? Is this the one that we win?" And he says, I can't tell you or it won't happen. And
Yep.
and then he raises the one finger a few minutes later, and you're like, oh man, it's go time.
And honestly, for me, this was because I never liked Doctor Strange as a kid. I didn't like Doctor Strange, but Benedict
I always thought it
Cumberbatch-
was weird. As a comic, it was one of those weird fringe ones that was kind of always really. It was actually apropos of its name. It was very strange. It was always kind of off-putting. It was kind of too existential for a 12-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah, that checks out.
But this made me like love Doctor Strange. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, he truly is the master of the mystic arts. He truly, and if it's not, and he's the MVP. He saw it all coming. He essentially, from beyond the dusting, manipulated events to get the victory.
Yeah, he did. I mean, by giving up the time stone when he did.
And once again, making Infinity War a better movie.
Right?
Yeah.
So we get this beautiful moment where Thanos gives us his killer line again. I am inevitable. And then we see that the stones are gone. And we get Tony Stark telling us the same thing that he told us at the very beginning of the whole freaking thing. Right? The final line of the very first Iron Man movie was, I am Iron Man.
I am Iron Man.
And so he does that, snaps his fingers, and then we get to the part of the movie where no one was able to not cry for 30 whole minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much, man, that we can really say about it, other than this storyline that Joe, you had identified as the most important one. I think gets a fitting send off. You get Tony, and you get Cap, both getting, I think, a fitting ending. Tony Stark,
And you get to where Thor jumps on the ship of the Guardians and moves forward, and there's more story to come. So you get all three elements of that idea too.
Absolutely.
And I think that also the Russo brothers do a great thing in letting Jon Favreau have a tribute, because Jon Favreau is the guy who started this whole thing, right?
If it's not for Jon Favreau,
Jon Favreau deserves
man.
Yeah, I mean, Jon Favreau deserves a lot of credit for this thing going the way it does, and for him to have that moment with his daughter, that was them giving him the moment. And I'm sure they asked him, "What do you want to say? Do you want to have some dialogue?" And he probably said, "No, I don't need any of that." And they're like, "You need to be in this movie in this moment." And I think that was very, very cool of them, and again, full circle, just like the Iron Man line. This is full circle. This is their nod to Jon Favreau and thanking him for giving them the opportunity to do what they do now. So I think that all played into it, and of course all the actors paying tribute to Robert Downey Jr. That was a really cool. It was almost kind of a Spock-esque funeral, and I thought that was a really cool, moment there, and
because that's
and
when
then
you
of course
get
the Cap stuff.
Yeah, and that's that moment. That's when you get Nick Fury. He's finally here. That was I heard I read that they shot that scene on the day that they did the Vanity Fair photo shoot.
Nice.
And so that's why they were all together, because I bet you that was about the only time that everybody was in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
Because they weren't all there for that big battle.
And you got to feel for Scarlett Johansson, who's probably sitting on the sidelines just bawling, right?
Oh man,
she
yeah.
can't be in the frame.
And I really like.
They should have done a
I really like how it was the script was flipped, where Tony's holding Peter as Peter passes, and at this time Peter gets to do that, and then Pepper actually tells him that anyone who has been with a loved one as they're ready to leave this world has said it's okay. We're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I have breaking news on your podcast. I just got an alert from Google on my phone about something. We'll talk about it at the end, but I'm sorry, I wanted to just mention that.
Breaking news. I love it. I love breaking news, Shane.
I do. I'm very excited. Okay, so then let's. Oh man, you guys know how difficult it is to wrangle three people like us through a 3-hour movie with this much stuff in it.
Right.
Before we put a bow on this thing, and I know it feels like we're just breezing through the Tony Stark stuff, but really, man, like it's a beautiful send off to that guy and that character, and I don't know what else really
and
to
the
say.
actor.
Yeah, and I don't really know what to say about it other than you need to get your ass out there and see it if you haven't.
If you haven't,
and
what
I think,
the hell is wrong?
And
Go
I think
see it.
that also, I also think that Chris Evans gets a great moment, and that's a great moment, and the
absolutely.
decision. We could probably talk another half hour about the decision in which he gives Sam Worthington the shield instead of Bucky, but that's all.
Bucky's not in a position to take the shield. He's just
probably.
not. And Sam Wilson
And
taking over the shield is the best. It's the
Well,
best
I think your point, Brian, that you made in our chats, which is that Anthony Mackie is ready for more, and I think that is the real factor in why he gets the shield, right? So, well, here's your breaking news.
All right, let's get into it.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3 starts shooting next year, and they are in talks with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson to do a Thor 4. And so they're adding that to the slates of movies along with The Inhumans, and Shang-Li is another movie that they're planning, and Black Panther 2.
Shang-Chi?
Yeah, I read an article on CNN earlier and it quoted Tessa Thompson as saying that the story for Thor 4 had been pitched, but they were still at that sort of developmental stage for it.
That is awesome.
What do you think? Do you think that MCU has blown its wad, so to speak, or is there?
I'm excited for this next track. Chris Hemsworth joining the Guardians of the Galaxy makes it all worth seeing number 3, and of course the whole idea that we're going to get Warlock. We're also the whole idea that we're searching for Gamora, which is all foreshadowed in this last scene with them. I think all of that coupled is that movie is going to be something spectacular, and I think that's Kevin Feige all over. But beyond that, it just depends on how they decide to introduce these new characters. Because if they do origin stories again, then they're going to have to decide how they're going to do these origin stories, and if they stay with the same tone that they've currently been on with the origin stories, I think we're going to get weary of that very, very quickly, and it's going to fade very, very fast.
So anyway, guys, we're up against the 2-hour mark here. We're going to have to call it a day.
Yeah, we are. And I have to go to the day job tomorrow.
Yeah, so
thank you guys for accommodating me tonight. I really appreciate
it.
Sorry
Joe.
about
it is a pleasure. Anytime your movie making, filmmaking prowess is welcome on the Plotaholics. Anytime. You know what? Absolutely. If Brian and I are the first and second Avengers, Plotaholics, then you are the third. So,
all right. Thank you.
But anywho, who's the Watsy? You know what? It's the second hour, really the third hour at this point of this thing. Things might get a little weird, so we might want to go ahead and sign off for the Plotaholics.
Yeah, probably for the best.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks with we said Boys in the Hood, right?
Boys in the Hood. Yeah,
nice.
We're going to be doing Boys in the Hood.
Yep. So we will
a tribute to the late great John Singleton.
That's right. So until then, I'm Shane Wilson.
I'm Bryan Tann.
And that's Joe Compton, and we will talk to you again real soon. Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo.
Oh my God!
If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send the phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
Sometimes the end game is the perfect place to start.
We're in the end game now.
And other times you want to pretend the prequels were never a real thing. Let's just pod race to the end.
It's working!
Every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow. Whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics. Hey, Breakfast Club. of a two. We are the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you. Shane and Brian are an island, two real-life misfit toys, wanting to be a RoboCop.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Settling for Black Circle boys, and just like Dr. Hammond, extracting amber from wood.
And later there's running and screaming.
A little too busy asking if we could, and never asking if we should. But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
And that's what is. I had a college professor once that said something that has stuck with me ever since, and he said that there's no such thing as foreshadowing because it's only ever foreshadowing in hindsight.
Touche. That's a great point.
He said if foreshadowing is done well, then is somebody peeing?
I'm not.
No.
What is the one? Do you hear? Does everybody hear that?
I hear that.
I don't hear anything.
Joe, are you peeing?
Joe, you are the man.
It might not have been a pee. It might have been just pouring some water out or something. But
I hope it was pee.
Regardless,
Sorry, I held it as long as I could.
no, it's okay.